All right, here we are. Welcome out. Moving on to chapter three, self-understanding in a complex book. One of the reasons why I like this book is because unlike other critical thinking books I've had, and I'm kind of sad to say that I came to this late in my 25 plus years so far. I've only used this maybe the last year or two, and it really goes into the human machine. It's nice knowing all the terms and the terminologies, but if you don't prepare your mind, your heart, your soul, your emotions, whatever you want to throw in there, then you're not really ready to think critically, right? So this takes, as we looked at, what was it, chapter one, fair-minded thinking or strong sense thinking, depending on the terms you're using, same thing, different terms. You really have to look at human character traits, right? And there's a whole list of them, like nine of them, I think, if I counted correctly. And you really have to understand empathy and sympathy and point of view and all these things that it's really kind of a reflection on you. It's really kind of more of a giving than a taking. So you really have to give of yourself. You have to open up space, right? For other possibilities. You have to be objective. You have to do what I say is like fly above the rest. You don't want to be bound in the ground and be totally, subjective, too subjective, overly subjective, because you're just looking at things from a very limited perspective. And there's a lot of perspectives, many perspectives to look at things from and through. Right? So, anyways, here it is again. And another reason why I like this text is because it goes back over what we've just covered, right? So, in learning, if you want to learn about learning, that's one of the things you got to do. Excuse me. You know, summarize, do a summary, quick summary before you move on. If it's not already prepared for you, and these chapters have that. So, and again, I would very much advise people to get this book. If you're human, if you think, if you have a career, if you make decisions, any kind of decision, from the most simple to the most complex and demanding, this is good thinking. Critical thinking requires the development of basic intellectual skills, as we said, abilities, insight. Becoming a skilled thinker is like becoming skilled in basketball, ballet, or saxophone playing. These skills can be used to serve two incompatible ends, self-centeredness or fair-mindedness, right? And of course, you want fair-mindedness. We're all naturally self-centered, right? And generally lazy or inert. When you wake up in the morning, generally you don't want to get up. When you think about going to the gym, you don't want to go. When you have to do your homework, you don't want to do that. When you have to stay up late and work extra hard, stay at work extra hard, extra late and work extra hard, you don't want to do that. So you have to fight against these constant debilitating thoughts and human nature, really. The skills of critical thinking can be learned in a weak sense, selfish thinking. Talked about that a few minutes ago. We are focused on the development of critical thinking, strong sense thinking. Fair-mindedness requires us to develop a network of interrelated traits of mind. Development as a critical thinker occurs in predictable stages, right? So, can you learn to think or think better? Yes, it's possible. Some professors or academics are not sure as to whether one can really learn critical thinking. They see it as an intangible soft skill or something like that. And I say, oh, of course you can. You can learn it. I have learned it over many, many years, but it's a developmental skill or a developing skill. Engaging in that development is challenging. There you go. It's true. Requiring planning and continued, key phrase here, continued practice over a lifetime. That's why I highlighted that, right? Not over weeks or months or even a few years, right? It's year after year and consistently, day after day, I would say, maybe not hour after hour, I mean, during any given week, you are probably going to have to use critical thinking to some degree, some extent, especially on the job, right? Employers are looking for good critical thinkers, logical, analytical, practical, fair-minded, objective, comprehensive thinkers, right? And the better you do that, the higher up you can move in the rankings at any place of work and in any career. Our goal in this chapter, and again, nicely done, not only a summary, but specifically points out what are the learning, as we call them, in the trade, in the professional academic trade, learning outcomes, right? So what are the learning outcomes? What are you shooting for? Our goal in this chapter is to lay a foundation for better understanding the nature of the human mind. And even before I read this book or any organized text, I knew about these things. I thought about, you got to learn how to think, and you got to learn how to think and ask the right questions, best questions, right? Like any political event, any political issue that's going on now, like with the ICE issues, um, are you looking at it from an emotional bias perspective? Are you looking at um, the laws and what's going on? Are you just a hater? And that means you're probably going to go with you're going to see a particular uh, belief or beliefs, right? Or angle or point of view. Yeah, that's right, that's right, that's right. And if it doesn't agree with yours, no, 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 ignore it, ignore it. Don't even think about it. Don't even question what you believe yourself. Just go with the stuff that's comfortable to you. Maybe you have an axe to grind. Maybe you're a hater for some reason. And I would suggest, I don't know if I hate anything. Really, I hate losing, but if you hate any particular group or individual, why? And if you do hate those groups or individuals, maybe you hate yourself. Because all groups, all individuals are fallible and they have good sides and bad sides, and there's no angels out there, as far as I know, right? Some are better than others for sure, but what's really going on? I have a friend who's of a particular religion, I won't say which, or some friends actually, and people read anti fill in the blank literature, right? And then they meet these people individually and they go, I don't know, geez, what I read, what you are and what I experience with you is nothing like what I read. No kidding. Wow. What a revelation, right? So there's a lot of lies and misinformation and propaganda. You really, really got to be strong second sense thinking, right? You really got to be strong. And that sometimes means standing out from the crowd. Maybe being jeered, not revered, but jeered, right? Why are you thinking you're stepping out of the group think? You're wrong, you're bad, then they start persecuting you. Not only the individual or group that particular group persecutes, but all of a sudden they put you into that category. You must be persecuted. You don't believe and understand and buy into all our particular agenda or mindset or propaganda. So be careful. That's all I'm saying. Be very careful out there. So they're talking about laying a foundation for better understanding the nature of the human mind. And man, you really got to study that. And I've studied a lot about it. And there's a lot of limitations, natural limitations on the human mind. I can tell you that much. We begin by taking a further look at human egocentrism. That is our natural state, as I said, right? And the obstacle it represents. We then consider some basic distinctions we can use to achieve greater self-command. And that's what it's all about, right? Isn't that part of America, Pilgrim's Feet, and thoroughfare and self-discipline. I swear I don't know if that's the term used in that song, but it's something like that. So, being self-disciplined and that concept of self-discipline, um, I mean, that's ancient thinking. You can go back to thick-faced black card, which is an ancient Chinese philosophy, at least 100 years old, uh, in which one tries to improve oneself, right? And you have to really overcome the self. There's one chapter 2 or 3, that talks about the unlearning phase. You have to unlearn and let go a lot of stuff in order to get rid of the garbage and free yourself up to see more clearly, right? To get that transmitter or maybe the receiver more open, get a clearer signal, right? All good stuff. I love this stuff. That's why I teach it. I'm not just a teacher, I'm a participant, and I'm a buyer of said philosophy. Right? So, a major challenge, human challenge we face in learning is that our life is dominated by a tendency to think and feel egocentrically. Nothing could be further from the truth. No, I'm just kidding. Nothing could be more truthful. Our life is deeply situated in our own immediate desires, pains, thoughts, and feelings. Many people seek immediate gratification or long-term gratification based on an essentially selfish perspective. How about that? I read this stuff and I just go, man, this stuff is so true and so important to know and understand. Sometimes I'll just read something like that and just contemplate, reflect upon it, meditate upon it. That's what learning is, right? Really taking it in and owning it, feeling it, experimenting with it, operating upon it in the real environment, IRL, right? The real world. And what is that? The IRL in real life? Yeah, in real life. Isn't that the gamer terminology? In IRL, I hear that used a lot. Many people are not typically or fundamentally concerned with whether their perceptions or meanings are accurate. Don't care. Just, I want to believe what I want to believe, what I've always believed, what I need to believe. And if I stop believing it, it'll destroy my little world. Because I'm so weak-minded, so emotionally invested in a particular ideology, philosophy, belief system, blah, blah, blah. But I have not even begin to examine that belief system or myself or the depth and breadth of what it all means in the least. I haven't even taken a chisel and taken the first stroke to chisel away at, what is really uh, limiting me from seeing what's really going on, right? And that's a power tool, I guess you could say. Governments use it, advertisers use it, political parties use it. We want you to think a particular way, but not too much. Because if you think too strongly, too independently, too selflessly, you're going to see what's really going on. And I think I see more and more of that happening, where people are waking up, especially in the political realm, right? People have been propagandized and lied to, and fake news and whatever you want to call it. So I think I see an awakening, not necessarily to the truth, but to the manipulation that's going on, and then eventually the truth. Although they usually think we are, many are not significantly concerned with personal growth. Oh, I love this stuff. Again, I think I've said this before, but I tell my students, don't just highlight everything. Highlight the main points, but look at me. What have I done? I usually don't do this with any text, but this is all so good that I just can't uh, bypass it. I can't summarize it. I can't highlight or hit the highlights. It's all highlights. So I just, uh, you know, highlight the whole thing. Um, so humans are not naturally motivated to discover their own weaknesses, prejudices, or self-deceptive tendencies. Man, that is important. Rather, they seek to get what they want, avoid the disapproval of others, and justify themselves in their own life. You notice, like, I either offline or online. I see a lot online. I'm on there occasionally, but I don't spend a lot of time online. But anytime that someone says something negatively to a particular comment, somebody makes a comment, somebody comes along and opposes it or tries to uh, pick it apart, right? In logic and thinking and so forth. Um, generally speaking, people just get defensive. They don't even think about, wait a minute, you might have something there, or maybe I don't know. Let me examine it. Usually it's just no, defense, 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 right? I mean, we all do it. I do it. But then you have to learn to kind of put the brakes on. There's a comedian by the name of Johnny No Breaks, right? I would say you need to be Johnny Breaks. Be a little skeptical, right? And skepticism is not everything's a conspiracy theory. I don't believe anything, right? Skepticism is just, wait a minute. I'm not really sure. It's the first time I've really been exposed to what they're saying or what's going on or what's being said about what I'm saying. So hey, let me think about it. Give me a minute. Give me a moment. Give me some time. The tendency for humans to think egocentrically, I'll be okay, means that typically people have little or no real insight into the nature of their own thinking and emotions. Again, let's pause and contemplate. So very essential, so important, critical. That's a critical aspect of critical thinking, right? For example, and I've never seen anything like this, my 25 years of teaching. Finally, after 23 years or so, I finally come across this book and I'm like, damn, holy crap, this is like the end all and the cure all right here. You usually don't get that, but there it is. This is one of my favorite textbooks. There's a few favorites out there. Thick-Faced Black Card is one of them. As a man, it should be as a person, but it's an old text. As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. There's a bunch of books that you need to read. Um, very essential stuff, in the fields of critical thinking, philosophy, economics, finance, and so forth. For example, many people unconsciously believe it possible to acquire knowledge without much thought, that it is possible to read without exerting intellectual energy, and that good writing is a talent one is born with. Yeah, I hate that. Oh, so and so is so talented. Well, they might have some natural ability, but when you look at it, they're like, for instance, great basketball players, first at the gym, first there, last to leave, taking maybe dozens or hundreds of more shots or passes or dribbling. There was a guy by the name of Pete Maravich, died at the age of 40. He played back in the 70s and into the 80s a bit. And one of the premier guards in the NBA. A lot of people don't know about him because he played on a whole bunch of the teams he played on were like some of the worst teams in the league. I don't know why. Then finally, the last year he got on the Boston Celtics with Larry Bird and all those guys. And he goes, geez, now I see what a good team is about. And it's an entirely different mindset, from the mindset of the team that I or he played on, right? But the guy used to practice 8, 9, 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? Um, and by the time he was 14, he was good enough to, play on a high school basketball team. And I think he did, as a matter of fact. I don't know if that's legal because that's not. Is that high school? High school's 15, isn't it? So yeah, he joined the varsity team. He was so good, and he became the lead shooting guard. But in college, he averaged like 44 points a game, and this was before the 3-point line. 44 points a game. I don't care if you're averaging 44 points a game in first grade. Oh, that'd be kind of hard to do. In high school, or some lesser league or non-professional situation, or at least a situation verging on professional, because that's where a lot of good college players go to the NBA. But he was a phenom, right? So he exerted a lot of energy in order to become superior. And again, there's this rule called the 10. Maxwell is his last name. I remember he's got curly hair. I forgot his first name. But he talks about the 10,000 hour rule. In order to even infringe upon or advance or become, go into the lowest level of expert takes 10,000 hours of practice, dedication, working, reworking, hard work, right? And that good writing is not a product of practice and hard work. As a result, people tend to evade responsibility for their own learning. I've had students do that. Professor Brown, you're really good at teaching. You're a good writer, but you really don't teach us how to write. Well, that's not my job. My job is to give you some of the essential basics, to narrow it down to what you really need to know first and foremost, and then build from there. And then it's really up to you. The stuff that I've learned, things that I've learned, it's really come down to me. It's 90% on me. Sure, teachers help and textbooks help and classes and seminars and webinars, that all help, but you got to do the work. There's no shortcut, unless you have a photographic memory, I guess, or like in the Matrix, you can just I need to learn how to drive a Black Hawk helicopter. All right, let me download that. Okay, now I can drive a Black Hawk helicopter. Yeah, we don't work like that. Sadly, sad to say. Or what was it in Gulliver's Travels? One of the great scientists or thinkers in the textbook, develops this wafer you can just eat. You want to learn history? Here, eat this. You want to learn about psychology? Here, eat this wafer. Now you've ingested all the knowledge. Fanciful thinking, wishful thinking. That's really cool. Like Superman or having superpowers, but yeah, we're not invulnerable. We're not super learners. At least most of us are not. Anyways, as a result, people tend to evade responsibility for their own learning. They do not seek to learn new modes of thinking. Much thinking is stereotypical and simplistic. Yet our egocentrism prevents us from recognizing this. We create the inner chains that enslave us. Oh my God, we could just sit here and contemplate all this. I could give you endless examples, and we could talk about just these few passages, few paragraphs worth of stuff for hours. Hell, I can make a lifetime study out of just this page. This is great stuff. Great stuff. These interchains can have a negative effect on our relationships, success, growth, and happiness. It is not possible, and I can tell you, I think I've told you before, I flipped the script 180 degrees. I was very antisocial. I was very depressed, even suicidal at one time, living a very deep, dark, depressing life. And after a while, I said, well, I'm either going to end my life or fix it. And I began to fix it, which took many, many years of conscious and conscientious thinking, right? And working and planning and practicing. Not easy, right? It is not possible to get beyond the egocentrism we each inherit, right? We're born with it, right? As human beings, by ignoring our ego or pretending we are decent people, after all, we can restrain our egocentrism only by developing explicit habits that enable us to do so. That's what this textbook is about. That's what this course is about. That's what this class is about. That's what moving forward is about. So anyways, this is a very, I was going to say long chapter. It's a very involved chapter, a very rich chapter. So it's going to take at least a couple of videos to get through this, right? And even after we've gotten through it, it's just a summary, just an overview. The work involved, the work entailed is tremendous. So I hope you're ready to do the work, strap in, and take it serious, right? And advance and improve your life to greater satisfaction, effectiveness, and ability, right? In the workplace, at home, the community, and beyond. Although no one defines himself or herself as an egocentric person, everyone has egocentric tendencies. How can we not, right? Well, first thing you wake up in the morning, how do I feel? Oh, I'm tired. I don't feel like this. I feel like that. I have energy. I slept good. I feel great. And you're looking at the world and functioning from how you feel. You may run into people who are tired or angry or miserable because they just lost their job or they just came out of a relationship or they just learned that they're ill, maybe even terminally ill. There's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, right? And we just ignore it. When we're happy, we see things through rose-colored glasses, right? And because of our insensitivity and natural egocentric state of mind, we don't see that in other people, right? A lot of times. You have to practice seeing it and understanding, having empathy. Empathy is huge in critical thinking. Being empathetic means being able to feel for the other person, feel where they're coming from. Forget your perspective, no matter what it is, right? You may have a particular cultural, religious, political, socioeconomic status, perspective, I don't know, whatever. But you got to put that on the back burner. Put away the hate, put away the natural tendency to hate and to guard and to guide and deflect, right? You've got to. Those are all weak sense thinking, weak minded thinking, infantile, immature, unproductive thinking, right? Don't be a child the rest of your life. Therefore, to command your minds, you need to understand the problem of egocentricity and how it plays itself out in your life, our life, and those around you, our lives, right? Only through self-understanding can we be more than a product of influences and write our own scripts. So again, it's good to be a part of society, even a part of member of groups or joiner of groups. That's fine. But if you're just becoming a part of the Borg, if you haven't watched that, check that out. It's probably online. Watch it on YouTube or something. There was several episodes. Look for the first episode of the Borg and Star Trek, and it was basically all these individuals thinking like the main Borg, or maybe it was a computer, right? And they had individual bodies, but their mind was of one mindset. That's like communism, fascism, propaganda, right? Brainwashing, right? You don't want that. You want to stay away from that. You want to remain independent for sure. The more you move away from who you are, the more problematic it becomes. The more depressed you can become, unproductive, unhappy, unfulfilled. You need to find out who you are at the core, and not for selfish reasons, but for unselfish reasons, right? To maximize who you are so that you can reach out and help others more efficiently, more honestly, more effectively, right? If you uncritically believe what you were taught, your beliefs are likely to become part of your egocentric identity and affect the manner in which you think. For example, you are egocentric to the extent that you unconsciously use egocentric standards such as these to justify your beliefs. So this is, oh man, these are great. These are the beliefs that so many poor thinkers have, right? It's true simply because I believe it. It's true because we, the group, right? So there's the Borg. It's true because I want to, I need to, I have always believed it, right? It's true because it is in my self-interest to believe it, right? So this is what we do. And look at all those perspectives. Good Lord. Are you 12? Are you a child? Right? You're not thinking It's weak sense thinking, not strong sense thinking, not open-minded thinking, closed-minded, childish, very protective, very defensive, very infantile, small-minded thinking. It's gross. Can I use that word? Right? It's really gross, especially to see grown adults think like that. And there are many of those out there. Right? Just go online; they're all over the place. Sometimes when I'm reading comments, I'm going, "Geez, is this person like 12?" Then you look at their profile, and they look like 40, 50 or older. They've never done any of this work or understood any of this, and that's what the textbook talks about. Most people live their lives not being exposed or experiencing any of this or very little of this. If you consciously recognize these natural tendencies in yourself and deliberately and systematically seek to overcome them by thinking fair-mindedly, your definition of yourself begins to change from that of self-centered person to that of fair-minded critical thinker. And remember, there were 6 levels of thinking, right? You want to get up to expert thinking. So you could not get there stuck in this mindset or types of thinking, right? Yeah. So the mind's 3 distinctive functions. Recognize those 3 distinctive functions: thinking, feeling, wanting. That last one's kind of interesting, right? Thinking is the part of the mind that figures things out. It makes sense of life's events. It creates the ideas through which we define situations, relationships, problems. It continually tells us this is what is going on, this is what is happening, notice this and that. Feelings are created by thinking. So the thinking comes first, then the feelings. Evaluating whether the events in our lives are positive, negative. Feelings continually tell us this is how I should feel about what is happening in my life. I'm doing really well, or things aren't going well for me. Our desires allocate energy to action, right? So it kind of, you think, you feel, and then you act. Think, feel, usually feeling is more heart oriented, and then into the body act, right? That's a good way to visualize it, this 3-pronged aspect of basic functions of the human mind. Our desires allocate energy to action in keeping with what we define as desirable, possible. It continually tells us this is worth getting, go for it, or this is not worth getting, don't bother. Right? And I think we have this thinking, this go for it, don't bother, and a lot of whether or not we believe something. Whether or not we believe something is kind of, well, does it line up with how I feel? I've always felt. Does it line up with what I want? Does it line up with what I hate? Again, I mean, are you 12? Are you 10 years old? Function of thinking is to create meaning, make sense of the events in our lives, sorting events into named categories, finding patterns. That's critical thinking, right? Function of feeling is to monitor or evaluate the meanings created by the thinking, right? Evaluating how positive, negative the events of your life are, given the meaning you are ascribing to them. Function of wanting is equal with the will. It allocates energy to action, right? So again, thinking creates meaning. Feeling is to evaluate the meanings, right? And then from there, wanting. What do we want to do? What is our will? Now, what do we want to do with that thinking feeling? The results of that thinking feeling. Right? Looked at this way, your mind is continually communicating 3 kinds of things: what is going on in your life, feelings, positive, negative about those events, and things to pursue, where to put your energy in the light of 1 and 2, as I said. Thinking is part of the mind that figures out what is going on. To repeat, feelings tell you whether things are going well or poorly. The wanting part of the mind propels you forward or away from action, right? So here's a nice, more detailed list, explanation, right? And putting specific terms to making sense of the world or the particular feelings, right? or the particular action, things we're driven to do. Right? So that's a great chart. I think what I'll do, and I feel, and I want, I think what I'll do is eventually I'm going to probably take all these charts and lists and terminology, after you go through another lesson on learning, is after you've gone through everything, kind of got a general feel for it. Now you want to go back and pull out the specifics, right? How do you best learn or take in this newfound knowledge and learn it and make it a part of you, not just memorized statements, but it becomes a natural, organic knowledge within you, right? You own it, it becomes part of, you're starting to put your words and thoughts and feelings to those terms and those definitions, right? That's how you learn. It's not just, oh, I'm just going to memorize every term, definition, term. That's fine. But if you really want to learn it, you got to start or know it or really know it, even teach it if you want to. You've really got to figure out what it means to you and put it in your own words, right? That type of thing. All right. Couple more pages. These charts. Thinking, feeling, wanting are interwoven. Where one is, the other two are represented as well. These three functions continually interact and influence one another in a dynamic process, right? And this is a basic flow. I think, I feel, I want, but it can kind of go. I think, I want, I think, I feel, I think, I feel, I want, right? So here it is, right? It's not necessarily just in that natural progression. I think, I feel, I want. You say, I want, something. You just naturally might go to, I want. And then you say, it really, yeah. Well, how do I feel about that? And then where did that come from? That want, right? And then you go, I feel. I go, I feel, yeah. Well, what's the thinking that led me to feeling that way? And what does it encourage me to want? Right? So you're always working within the dynamic of those three elements back and forth in various combinations, right? Instruction that fails to address the affective or emotional side of your life can turn you into an enemy of education unless you take command of your thinking and learning. Oh my gosh, I love that. I will marry that statement. Instruction that fails to address the effect or emotional side of your life can turn you into an enemy of education unless you take command of your thinking and learning. So true. It's not the teacher if you're not learning or if you don't like learning. So I don't like to learn education. It's all the teachers. It's their problem. Well, if you got bad teachers, then figure it out yourself. Teach yourself, right? Eventually, the best thinkers are those who are the best learners and the best self-taught people, right? So try to take that bad element out of the equation, right? Bad teachers, find a better teacher. I don't know, or bypass that teacher and do your own teaching, self-teaching. As I said, 90% of learning is self-teaching, self-practice, right? Working with the knowledge, the experience by yourself. We change undesirable feelings and desires by changing the thinking that leads to them. That's true. Feelings do not correct themselves. Desires or wants do not correct themselves. Change only through thinking. And I can tell you, this is true. Because when I was younger, I was full of depression, doubt, fear, inertia, inactivity. I really had to work on changing my thinking, right? And cleaning out all the darkness inside and trade light for darkness, right? And instead of life acting upon me, I acted upon life. And it's made all the difference in the world. I haven't had suicidal thoughts in a long time until that bill came in for the house. No, I'm just kidding. If, however, you take command of your thinking in your classes or anywhere in any aspect of your life, you carefully analyze the content, determine what is most important to learn. You do the work, as I said. Bad teacher, yeah, override the teacher. Figure out how to teach yourself, right? You got to do that eventually. Because what are you going to do? Stay in college the rest of your life or take courses the rest of your life? That's not a bad idea. But you really got to learn, even if you do take those courses, to really learn something, you have to do the work, right? Stop looking for excuses, right? Don't be the victim. You are self-motivated no matter how boring the class itself might seem. Didn't I just say that? My students go, this class is boring. Who cares? You know what's boring? Most of the stuff I read. That's important. You know what's boring? Grading my students' papers. Really boring. I've seen the same bad thinking in writing so many times. It's nauseating, to be honest, right? But it doesn't matter. I'm not here. That's not about my feelings, right? How about that one? Not about what I feel, but about what I need to get across to the student. And then once you flip that, that's when you get motivated, right? You overcome selfish tendencies. I'm bored. This is boring. To proactive tendencies. Yeah, you know what's boring? Most of the books I've read, right? And I've read hundreds of books. I've probably read 1,000 or more books by now, in many different genres and disciplines. And some of that stuff was very difficult to read, and to be honest, boring. But guess what? It has essential knowledge in it. So therefore, I have to struggle with it. Too bad, you know. Everything can't be a Disneyland ride or exciting or fun, you know. Fun is great, but it's a distraction. It's not a main element of life. You see yourself as capable of learning anything you put your mind to. There you go. When I got that mindset, and I'm going, geez, I could pretty much learn anything, you know, if I really put my mind to it. Some things have more of a tendency, more of a natural propensity, or innate ability to learn. You know, I read some books on physics, and I go, I could never be, you know, scientist, maybe some aspect of science, but being, you know, majoring in physics, that stuff is, I don't have the brain for it, right? Or mechanically wise, or, you know, using my hand. I just don't have that natural tendency. I used to work on my car when I was younger endlessly, and all I ended up doing was becoming a more and more creative cusser. You know, I learned how to swear much better, but I never really was able to, you know, work well, become a mechanic. I didn't have the natural tendency. Anyways, when you feel frustrated during the learning process, you persevere through the frustration. Right? When you feel confused, you realize you need to ask questions so you can get better understanding what you're learning. Go to the teacher. Go to GBT chat. Go to textbooks. You know, go to videos. Go to seminars, webinars, books, whatever. You know, and sometimes I always tell my students when you're learning something, I sat down. I probably took maybe 10 or 12 years, 10 or 12 summers, basically, and started reading on various disciplines, um, economics, finance, science, math, philosophy, theology, history, whatever. And I started reading, I would read like 5, 6, 7 books. Say, for instance, economics. I would read books, economic textbooks from the conservative side, from the more liberal or left side, centrists, right? And that's the only way you can really get at the truth, right? If you read just one book on economics, that's not really going to do it. It did. It took me about 6 or 7 books to begin to understand, right? From all the various perspectives. And some aspects of economics were emphasized more by certain authors and less by others. So I had to really work at it. And I just put a book on my bed And I started reading this book a long time ago, but I haven't finished it. It's another economic book. But I remember looking at it and go, oh, this looks really good. Then I saw a video uh, produced on YouTube by the same author, Asian guy, I forget his name, but really good. And he's really good because he's very honest. He teaches from a very, I don't want to say simplistic, but a very elemental type of perspective. So, and he's very honest. He's fun. He's funny. He's interesting. He's lighthearted, right? He's not serious, and he's got a really interesting, kind of like, a Zen Buddhist philosophy, where, how the Zen Buddhist is always trying to crack up other Zen Buddhists to make them really, comfortable and to see things how they really are. So I got to read that book. But, you've got to be exposed. You got to, to look at something like, who was it? Great artist, Da Vinci, I think it was, who, in order to draw something, would look at it from multiple angles. He'd look at it from this angle and then turn a little bit more that way, then another angle, then another angle, then another angle, then another angle, so that he could see the whole object more clearly as to what it really is, all the different angles, um, adding up to the overall essence of what that object really is or was, right? When you feel confused, you realize you need to ask questions so that you are not afraid to say, I don't understand. Being honest, being sincere, open-minded, humble. Another aspect of a good critical thinker. I don't know. Well, let me check into it. And there are certain things that I had to study, and it took me quite some time, and I had to get the help of other people, right? Like illegal immigration. What does that really mean? What does it really mean from the other perspective? From the point of view of people who are experiencing that, right? And I had my students, and I live in LA, talk about that. And then I posted online an article, and I got a lot of people responding to that, maybe some illegal citizens. And I got so good, I was so adept at thinking from that perspective that they thought I had come here illegally. That's how you do it, right? That's I don't want to say complete and total empathy, but that's considerable empathy, right? And you're really giving of the self, putting yourself aside. Me, put that over there. Now you come in, right? That's how you want to do it. I don't understand. You realize that critical thinkers are those who can differentiate that which they understand from that which they do not. And I think that's it. You think controls every part of your life, emotions, decisions, right? And I think that's it. A lot of good charts in here. Yep, that's it. So, I'm going to continue from here next video. So that's it for now. Take care. Have a